Hey everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. This is our show where we shine a spotlight on leaders in public service, and we have deep conversations about sustainability and how we build a thriving future for our cities. Today's guest is very unique. It's my friend Tony Moline. He is the president and CEO of the Cedar Park Chamber of Commerce. I say it's unique because to me, Tony, being in a nonprofit connected very deeply with the city, is very public service adjacent. Tony has a lot of insight into what cities can do to partner with chambers and how valuable that relationship can be for the economic thriving of a community. What's really interesting too is he gets into the needle he has to thread to both advocate for issues but be nonpartisan in that. There's so much similarity to how city managers navigate their lives. You're going to find so much value in this conversation. Tony is a good friend. We really have a good time, mostly, poking fun at each other, but he's got so much insight for you. Thank you for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. Tony, thank you so much for being on Leading Thriving Cities. You are our first, what I would call public sector adjacent guest. You are the president of the Cedar Park Chamber of Commerce, and you work very closely with the city of Cedar Park, don't you?
Whether they like it or not.
They can't get rid of you, can they? They've tried. No. It just hasn't taken yet.
Yeah. No,
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I really was excited to do this because specifically, A, you and I have great conversations all the time. Yeah. And B, I think you have some interesting insight into cities and their growth and the economy and the economic growth, because Cedar Park has just exploded over the last probably 10 to 20 years.
It has. Yeah. So I got there 11 years ago, going on 12 at this point. And so, Cedar Park has just, mainly because I'm there now.
Mainly, yes.
But, really what it is it's a great place to be. People want to be there. School district is insanely popular.
Very high rated.
We've got a great business community. We've got businesses that enjoy working with our city, which is unheard of in a lot of places.
Pretty rare. Yeah.
And so, the city has set up a climate that is very adaptable and professional for businesses. The rules don't change on them. It is what it is, and they thrive on it.
I like that.
Yeah.
So as chamber president, you've been you're president and CEO for 11 years. Yeah. What is it you wish some people understood about that role? Because that is a very unique role.
It is. I mean, for me, I think what's hard to explain is, I still have a hard time when people say, so what do you do?
I don't know.
It just depends on the day.
Yeah.
We do a lot of professional development with our smaller businesses. We do a lot of advocacy. We do major events. We do smaller events. My role in particular is a jack of all trades, a master of none. I mean, I got to be able to pivot, but we do have a lot of things that we're able to do, and I love the job simply because you don't know what you're going to be doing on any given day.
It's different every day.
It is.
One of the things you mentioned there was advocacy, and that's one of your favorite parts, isn't it?
It is.
What does that look like? So how does a chamber advocate for the business community in a city?
There's a lot of different ways. We do it, there's a saying, if you know one chamber, you know one chamber. So every chamber is different. The way we advocate is we do it on policy, not politics.
Okay.
And so we don't advocate for or against any party or any person, but we do have specific opinions on different policies. So that can be anything from making sure that our cities have the economic development tools at their disposal to be able to attract more businesses. It could be we are in favor of an upcoming bond issue for the school district because we're a fast growth school district. They have a lot of needs. They are building a campus all the time.
All the time.
All the time. And so, we actually get to promote or be against things that we think are important for the business community.
Is that hard to, what guides you in that? Because I would imagine that's really hard to stay politically neutral and yet be for an idea.
Yeah, I think it's hard to keep your personal feelings out of it a lot of times. That being said, I look at it as we're going to make a third of our members happy when we make a decision. Mm-hmm. We're going to make a third of our members upset, and a third of our members might not even know that we've made a decision. And so, it's
interesting.
It's all about how it impacts business.
Yeah.
The bottom line, we've got to kind of black or white how this we perceive will impact business. Will it be good for business? Will it help businesses grow?
Yeah.
Will it be impactful? Those are the ways we make the decision for or against it, or to stay neutral.
Yeah. And you become a really good, I think through that, a trusted resource. I noticed during COVID, I don't necessarily want to flash back to those days, but man, early days of COVID, y'all were such a resource. I looked forward to getting the email from you every day because I knew what Tony was spending his day doing was digging through all the things to help us understand what we needed to know as businesses in Texas, like right here in the Central Texas community. You were providing that information. And the world is spending their time arguing on one side or the other about the information. Yep. You were just information focused.
Yep.
Here's the facts. And that became incredibly helpful in a very uncertain, very scary time.
Yeah.
Y'all did a great job of that.
Well, I appreciate that. That was a team effort for sure. There was a lot that went into it. I did spend quite a few 12, 13-hour days. Not the healthiest time for me, probably.
No. That's why I don't want to flash back to
from a business standpoint. That being said, we did try to just provide information, provide links. Things were changing daily, whether it was a lockdown or the SBA loans were becoming available, what you needed, how you got this information when we did the grants for our community, specifically through the city. When we did the grants with Wilco Forward. I mean, we were there. It was nice. Again, at this point, I think I am the most tenured chamber exec in Williamson County, which that's scary in and of itself. I think I was back then as well. And so I was the only non-elected person in the rooms when we were doing those Williamson County grants. Yeah. And so I do think that our ability to be nonpartisan was probably what helped us get into the room and be able to have those kind of conversations, because at the end of the day, it wasn't about this party or that party. It wasn't about whether you thought we should be in lockdown or not. It was about how do we help businesses when they need it most? How do we do this quickly?
Yes, and I can tell you like that ability, I never thought about it until this moment, how much of a role the chamber played in us even sitting in this room today.
Oh,
Forward Partners wouldn't exist except for we got the Wilco, we qualified for that, and we found out about that through you guys. The connection I made with the bank that helped us with our SBA deal was through the chamber. And that's just now occurring to me for the first time, that we literally wouldn't be in this room because we weren't ready to deal with a worldwide pandemic.
Well, hopefully that's a good thing that we're in this room.
Yes. I know how excited you are to be interviewed on camera, so I get that. But no, that's a huge thing and we're one business. We're one small business out of all the businesses. And so I think there's something to, we talk a lot about public service and it being about the public good. Ultimately, chambers are about that, the public good through the business community. Yeah. And it makes a difference. It fed my family. It fed multiple families through that time that would not have been fed otherwise. And so I think it's really interesting the work y'all do. This is not exactly where I plan this conversation going, but it's fascinating, that ability to remain politically neutral while still speaking up on issues. That's interesting.
It's hard, and it's a needle that I feel I'm decent at threading. There are for sure some times where I'd be like, maybe I shouldn't have expressed that idea.
Yeah.
But I do think that, again, not to keep going back to COVID, but during a time that was very politically, kind of agitating for people. Yeah. I'm sure, I know for a fact, I had conversations with people who did not appreciate some of the positions that the chamber took and some of the things that we did. But these are also some of the same people who are still members of the chamber and can look back and appreciate what we did and why we did it. I feel like as long as I can say this is a business decision.
Yeah.
This
And
is
here's why.
Yeah, I feel like you may not agree with me, and that's fine. Like I have a pretty thick skin.
Yeah.
You may not agree with me, and that's fine. But this is why. This is in this moment. This is what we think is the best for business. And so
Navigating really challenging times like that and being able to say, hey, we're going to disagree, but here's our position on where we're moving. Being able to do that and maintain that relationship really is because the relationship was probably established and pretty strong before that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm guessing the people that looked at what you did, didn't like it, and are no longer a part of it, there probably wasn't a deep relationship there to begin with.
Yeah, and I can say, for the most part, we didn't lose many members, especially, again, in a time that was difficult, to say the least. We tried to work with everybody we could, and I mean, we didn't lose that many members during that time.
That's good.
Yeah, so again, I do feel like there were people who were maybe not excited about the news, but were okay with me sending it daily for a while.
Yeah.
And I found out months later there were people who had branches. They were a branch. They had branches in other parts of Texas, and they would send my emails to Dallas or to San Antonio, Houston, and I'm like, there had to have been another source, a more localized source. But
that's such a beautiful picture, though, of like when we lead, it has these resonating impacts that we're not even aware of. We don't. I always describe it as dropping a pebble in a pond and you see the ripples go out. Eventually, you can't see the ripples anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're not still going out. That doesn't mean people aren't affected. It's really interesting. When I think about the line you have to navigate, I was just talking to a city manager we were interviewing earlier today, and she was talking about the idea that, when you're in city management, you're watching every word you say to every audience, because they all want different things and they all have different agendas and different things behind what they're asking. And so you're watching every word. And so really your job is very similar to a city manager. You are threading this very, very small needle. I find that really interesting. I think and you relate really well to y'all city manager, Brenda.
I do.
And I think a lot of that is because y'all have very similar jobs, just in different contexts.
Yeah, I think the good thing is, and this doesn't happen, obviously, just like any relationship, it doesn't happen quickly. You earn trust and you keep trust. I've been doing this for many more years than just 11. I've been in this.
That's how long you've
job.
been here.
Yeah, that's how long I've been here.
Yeah.
I'm in a place now where I can be okay telling somebody something that they don't want to hear.
Yes.
And I don't have to watch my words as carefully anymore. Maybe
your staff, by the way, is going to watch this and be like, "Oh my Lord, I wish you would watch him just a little more."
That may not be a great thing, but I do think that sometimes I think it's hard for people to speak truth to power a lot of times. And so whether it's an elected official or whoever, and luckily, again, we have really great elected officials. We have really great people who work behind the scenes, whether it's city management or school district, whether it's state or federal. We have a lot of relationships that have been built over time that, I don't have to have awkward conversations. So that's good. That being said, I'm not afraid of them like I would be if I had only been in this community a year or two.
Right.
And so I think that comes with time.
Yeah, it does. Speaking of coming with time, you've been on a journey, obviously over your lifetime, but really I've seen over the last few years, you've changed for better or worse. Like you're doing the work, you're doing the hard work of growth.
Yeah. It's your fault. It's like when we get down to it, I was fine. I mean, I wasn't, but ignorance is bliss.
And then I just start asking questions. This question is really designed to get you to talk about how amazing I am. So if we can get there quickly.
Sure.
No, I really have, part of our friendship and our working relationship, I have enjoyed watching growth. And I'm curious, what are some of the internal things you've really been working on that you've had to overcome to be a healthier leader? Because I think you're to a point now where you're there, like you're spending time intentionally there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not done, right? Like, it never is.
It's a practice.
Yeah, it never is. I think some of the things, especially here recently, I used to pride myself in getting to work at 6. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was about. What kind of
Somehow
trophy?
you were screwed up as a child, basically.
I mean, I can remember my first job out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I would get there 30 minutes before the CEO would get there. And he got there at 6:30. Yeah. And so I went there and I got the coffee ready and all that kind of stuff. And we had great conversations and I learned a lot.
So there's value in that.
So there's value in that.
Yeah.
I never got out of the habit of it, even when I became the boss.
Yeah.
And
you're still there waiting for the CEO
I'm
to show up.
I'm still waiting for somebody to come and have a conversation and a cup of coffee.
And be like, hey, good job being here 30 minutes early.
So I think part of it is allowing myself the ability to practice what I preach a little bit more. If I expect people to decompress when they're not at work, if I expect them to leave work at work, then I need to do the same thing, whether that's emailing at 6 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night. Everybody's looking at you.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of be that leader, for lack of a better term, I guess. And so I'm finally on that path. We'll see. When this airs, I'll let you know if it's still.
We'll see how it's going. This will air sometime in January, so we'll see how it's going.
Yeah, that'll be a good. I mean, that'll be 6 months-ish.
I noticed you hesitated there with, I guess, if you call it a leader. I know you're hesitant to assign that to yourself, but that is what leadership looks like. It is being willing to do the hard things, and weirdly, the hard thing is disconnecting. It's prioritizing you. And it's funny you brought up that's how you started your career, because I've actually had a conversation earlier today with somebody as a young leader, and we were talking about that idea that when you first start your career, you just say yes to everything. Let's go, go, go. Yeah. And I had somebody at a conference, it was a really young leader. I think he was an intern. He raised his hand. He's like, okay, so how do we navigate that season where you need to say yes to everything, but also you don't want to burn out? I was like, well, I think there's an art to understanding that you're on a much longer timeline than you think. Yeah. You don't need to say yes to everything. You still need to be intentional even when you're young, because the problem is exactly what you identified. We build the muscle of saying yes to everything, and we never stop.
There's this guy who sent me an email earlier asking about some book that he's writing. And one of the questions is, how do you not say yes to everything? And it is, you get to a point where what makes you say yes when you're already overbooked are things like relationships. If people have, for my answer anyway, this is going to be in a book later, by the way.
So we'll know who gave us that answer, even though it's an anonymous survey.
Yeah. But honestly, it's one of those things where, for me, the answer is because they did it for me. Because they added one more thing to their calendar when I knew they were booked. Yeah. Because they picked up the phone call when I knew they were busy. You do these things now. I do these things now because I want to pay back the favor, or I want to make sure and show the same respect that they showed me. That being said, I say no a lot more now.
That's good.
So
that's actually because I can hear there's a fear underneath that if I say no, then I won't be paying them back. They will think it's disrespectful. They will think I don't care. But if you're really truly overcommitted already, there's nothing wrong with that.
What are you going to give them?
I would love to, but no, that's a good point.
What are you giving them if you're already overcommitted and you're trying to jam it in there?
Yes.
So I think, knowing kind of what your limit is important. When I got here, I said yes to everything. And it's exhausting. And so, when you're talking about somebody who it's an art. You've got to figure out, the things that you really should say. You don't have to say yes to everything. There are things that you probably should say yes to. There are things that, you don't have to say yes to, but
that's interesting. I'm wondering if early in our career we need to focus on building the muscle of identifying the things we should say yes to rather than building the muscle of saying yes to everything. Because one of those is sustainable, one is not.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay.
Well, I'm done.
That's gonna be a topic we write about. I promise you.
That's a wrap, folks.
We got one good quote. We're good to go. No, that's really helpful. And I remember you came back from a Boy Scout trip with your son. Is that right?
Yep.
And you said 3 days, no cell, no nothing, like disconnected. And I think you came back and said something like, "Is this what you've been trying to get me to do?"
Yeah. I mean,
it's magical,
when
right?
you can't check your email, when you can't get a text, when you can't there's something very relaxing about that. Now, we need to do it more than just over a weekend sometimes. But no, it's very, being able to just sit and relax and be in the moment is very nice as well.
That's good. Yeah. I've noticed that. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So you again, we talked about you are public service adjacent.
Yeah.
What would you go back and tell either a younger version of you or young people looking to get into, whether it's the chamber world or public service, but looking to serve, to make the world better in whatever way they do? What would you tell them?
Run now. Yeah.
Run away immediately. Don't even try it.
I mean, honestly, for me, I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to school. I was a political science major and a psychology minor, so
just a nerd from
sitting and
step
talking
one.
to people and BSing kind of was there.
Me too, clearly.
Yeah. No, I think what I would say is, again, be aware, be present, because I think there are a lot of things that we take for granted, especially. I sound so old, especially in our youth. Like
with
being able
age
to
comes wisdom.
Yeah, I guess. But again, there are so many really profound things that you get to be a part of in public service or public service adjacent. Mm-hmm. There are the things where you get to help a small business with a problem that they have that maybe was a simple answer for you. Maybe it was a conversation. I've had conversations with people who have been in Fortune 500 companies but are just now starting their small business, and they're overwhelmed because it's a very different beast.
Yes.
As the owner of a small business, you know that.
Yes.
It's not, you don't have the same backing as you do with a Fortune 500 company. You can't make the same kind of mistakes.
Resources.
Yeah. And so, again, I love the fact that we're able to network and connect people. I'm very relationship oriented. So my issue is I will sacrifice an end goal to make sure that a relationship lasts. Yeah. So that's one of my kind of downfalls. And I would say that that's okay. Lean into those types of things. So somebody who's looking to get into it, find the things that make you a strong leader or a strong person at that organization and lean into it. Yeah. Because you never know when that skill will help save a business, will help save a whatever thing you're doing, whatever thing is important at that point. You just never know.
Because it's not overstating things to say that part of the prosperity of Cedar Park is things that are completely out of our control.
Absolutely.
And another part of it is the efforts put in by people like you, by people like the city that work on that intentionally and help build it.
I think back to, I got here and they put me on the long range planning committee, and through that we got Bell Boulevard, and they told us back then, when we originally started talking about it, and for those who don't know, Bell Boulevard is this redevelopment thing.
Yes.
Huge project here in Cedar Park. And when they told us about it, originally it was going to be landscaping and digging the power lines underground. It was about beautification and not this massive public-private partnership that it turned into. And 10 years later, we're about to open a brand new library down there, and there's a farmer's market, and it just keeps going and going and going. And it's crazy to think, when they told us this is going to take a decade we're like, God, that's forever.
Yeah.
It was not.
Yes.
It happened real quick. Now, to anybody who's not paying attention, they probably do feel like it took forever.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, so much work goes into these things.
Yeah.
So much work. We feel very spoiled, I think, sometimes, especially if you've only lived in a few places. If you don't move around, you don't get the luxury of seeing communities that are struggling. And I say that with sincerity. It's a gift that I have seen communities that are dying, communities that are stagnant, communities that don't want to grow.
Yeah.
And then you come to a community like this that does have a plan, that has, vision, and leaders willing to try to make that vision a reality, and people who really want to put work into it. And they are in all shapes and sizes. They are people that I agree with and people that I disagree with, but we can see a common goal.
Yes.
And I've served on a lot of committees and enjoyed most of them.
Yeah.
And, you do get to see those results. And it takes time. So depending on your perspective, it happens real fast or it takes forever.
It's funny, in an interview earlier today, somebody was talking about parenting, and there's that quote that the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah.
The days to bring Bell Boulevard to fruition are really, really long. Yeah. But the years, that 10 years flashed by in so many ways.
Yeah. And luckily there were people a lot smarter and deeper into it than me dealing with it. Luckily, I just got to, tag along for a couple of committees and say, yeah, we agree. We like this from a business standpoint. So
yeah, I'm going to guess the contribution was deeper than that, but I like the humility. It's a nice move. It's something you brought up there, though, is the perspective, and I think it's interesting. I'm working with a city right now, very, very small town out in West Texas. They've got a prison there. Well, the prison a few years ago closed, and the city essentially had to slash their budget in half. Yeah. And this year they're currently in the middle of it's closed, but it's probably going to reopen, but they don't know that. Yeah. Well, they have made so many changes and so much progress for the last few years that the last closing was we got to cut it in half. This closing, they're going to cut it by about $500,000, but that's different than cutting it in half, right? So they have a visionary city manager who is making progress, saying we don't have to just be what we are today. And man, small town out in West Texas, that's a hard message, right? Yeah. But for people to go to different cities and see, yeah, you're right, it is not all growth. And we're in a season where a lot of the growth around here, it's just the right season for it, and it's happening. Leander's growing, Pflugerville's growing, Georgetown growing. It's all growing crazy. And so some of that is we're experiencing the fruits of that and some of the challenges of that. Yeah. But I love your point about perspective. Go to a city that is not having progress, that is not having growth.
And they're here.
You're going to see it.
Yeah, they're all around us. Yeah. We just are very lucky in our bubble. You know, and that's what you got to think of it as is a bubble. If you go, 200 miles in any direction, you can find cities that are having hard times. Yeah. And communities that are having hard times, chambers that are having hard times, businesses that are closing. We were one of the last ones to go into the COVID recession and one of the first ones to come out of the COVID recession. And it's because we've been growing this whole time. We didn't see as many closures as a lot of other places in a lot of other communities. Yeah. So we're lucky to be where we are. Geography, the excitement of, Central Texas and the growth and all that kind of stuff.
Companies moving here from all over the country.
We're lucky, and a lot of that is luck. Yeah. A lot of it has to do with people who 30 years ago said, hey, let's start working down this path too.
Yes, they could envision the Cedar Park of today, or at least something in that direction, even if they couldn't see today. Yeah. And then it's probably grown beyond what they even expected. Yeah. All that growth is always good, but growth also brings pain. What are some challenges you've kind of seen the city navigate to learn as we grow?
It's hard for me to probably discuss with any sense of knowing the challenges that the city has had to navigate. I can tell you, the business community has had challenges. Some of our residents have had challenges. But, overall, I think that we have a very responsive city. And so the challenges that we have are not like the challenges of other communities. I hate to kind of bunt it there, but
It's a pretty magical place
we
to live.
we have a really good, there are, I remember, this is going to sound so like backwoods, but one of the biggest challenges we had when I first got here were people who were complaining about chickens in their backyard. That was the challenge.
Yeah.
That was the challenge at the time, and it took several city council meetings to get through
Get that figured out.
That was, when those are your biggest challenges, I don't know that we have that many. I'm sure there are a lot more.
Now the challenges involve a lot of commas and a lot of zeros.
Yeah.
Like they're these huge, big things, complex things.
And I think, again, it's a testament to the responsiveness of our city leaders that it's not all out in the public, because here's one thing that I'll say. And again, communities are different. I'm not saying that any are better or worse, but when there is a community that has something going on that is seen as whatever, anti-business or distasteful or a problem of any sort, it's a black eye for that community is a black eye for all the communities that surround it too. Yeah. And so, the problems of an adjacent community are your problems as well. Yeah. And so you've got to start planning that way and looking that way a lot of times. And again, communities are different, residents are different, businesses are different. But a lot of times they share similar paths, and what gets in between somebody's, space can really make an impact. And so, again, I feel lucky that a lot of our issues, to the best of my knowledge, are handled with grace and dignity and, behind the scenes. And it's not this big, thing that happens in the middle of city council. Watch, there's a city council meeting this week. So
this week there will be some blow up.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think you're right about that. I see that a lot in Cedar Park. So have you spent your entire career in the chamber world?
Yes. I mean, I had a stint where I was an executive director of a county-wide Keep Texas Beautiful affiliate. So we were out there, picking up litter and doing countywide cleanup days.
Executive director sounds really sexy, but then there's a lot of picking up litter.
Then I asked for the job description. I said, wait, maybe I should have done this before.
So in that chamber world, I'm curious because you've now spent quite a bit of time there.
Easy with the quite a bit of time.
Listen, you've earned the gray hair, brother. Listen, we all have.
Man, I was like 6'5". I had dark hair when I got here, and these chamber miles,
they're tough. You told me the other day, chamber miles are tougher than regular miles. I understand.
Yeah.
Is what still gets you out of bed and excited every day? Is it being tied to all the different businesses and their stories? What is it that really excites you?
I think it's the unknown. It's what problem are we going to be able to fix today? Yeah. Because essentially that's a lot of what we do is we help connect people, whether that is to the planning department at the city, to somebody who's going to make their business cards, to whatever it is. We connect people and we help solve problems.
It's like you're just seeding growth all over the place.
That's it. But I mean, we advocate. We work really closely with the city, the school district. We have a lot of good partners on a state level. I serve on the Texas Chamber of Commerce Executives and the Texas Association of Business. And so, you've got, when you get to a certain point, you're able to cast a wider net of resources and be able to ask for help. Because I'll tell you, you get some weird questions and you're like, hey, has this ever happened in your community? And,
Yeah, if you raise your hand and say, we're a resource, people are going to ask.
People ask. And I think that's, you asked me earlier, I think it's hard when you're the only one in your community who does what you do. And
because usually unless you're a massive city, there is one chamber of commerce.
Usually just one chamber. There's usually just one fire department. There's usually just one. And so if you're the head of the organization and you're the only one in that community who does what you do, it's hard to be able to bounce ideas. to be able to talk through some challenges and stuff like that. And so, I think that's something to be able to keep in mind too, is grow your community. And that's not necessarily the people in your community. That's who you talk
people
to.
We call it your circle, right?
Yeah.
It's having the people that you can call on at any point.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've been very intentional about that.
Yes.
Yeah, or been forced to be intentional about that.
I've been lucky in that I've got several people that I do trust. I've got several people that, we've been able to share battle stories, and we feel confident that it stays between us, and that's important.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Y'all are, as a chamber, it's interesting. You are a connector. You talked about connecting the school district and the city, and you're kind of at the a hub for a lot of different connections. And what's interesting about being the hub is you're also then a part of all their stories.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm working on that's kind of on my board to spend some time on is I want to track every client and go back through and trace them to where we originally made the first connection that led us there.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a fascinating project, specifically because I can point to almost every one of them, and they will somehow connect back to Cedar Park Chamber, Leander Chamber, Pflugerville Chamber, and all the different connections we made that even in a different business. We didn't even start with this business. We started with our design and marketing business. And
I think I was the one that connected you with the Pflugerville Chamber.
You, yes.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I gotta be honest.
No.
I gotta be honest.
No.
You and Bridget both helped make that connection simultaneously. I think is how it worked, because you're both my favorites.
Weird how that ends up.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So y'all made that connection though. But what's interesting is all the connections I can point back to in our old business still have led to connections in the new business, and how that chain, y'all are the source of a lot of that. And so I think that's something that I don't know how much y'all talk about that with your team, but boy, that should be a daily conversation, because literally tomorrow when you go back to them, they need to hear, hey, Chad said they wouldn't exist without that, which means every person we impact in the future, the millions we want to over the next 40 years, are tied back to the work your team does. They should feel the weight of that and the pride that should come from that.
They should.
I'm going to call them all tomorrow afternoon and be like, did Tony talk to y'all today? Because he was supposed to. That was his homework.
No, I do. I mean, and I do think that that's part of what gets me excited, is what problem are we going to be able to solve today? How are we going to be able to, like you said, impact somebody positively?
Yes.
And whether that's saying, hey, call Right Creative to get your directory done, or what have you. I mean, there are, we talk about it within, within our own circle. We have a Williamson County Chamber Executives group that meets monthly.
That's
and
cool.
we talk about things that impact our region. Yeah. And so, again, we're trying to elevate each other as well. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it is, trust in knowing your community and being able to help connect people the right way at the right time.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
One of the last questions we always ask is, what do cities need to rethink to create a thriving future for their teams? Obviously not being a city. Yeah. You're like, what's my fourth question? And I said, I'm going to come up with one on the fly. Yeah. What is something, because most of our audience is public service. It's a lot of city managers, a lot of police chiefs, a lot of people at that level, city council. What do cities need to do to be a great partner with the chamber? We know the benefits that comes from that. What are some things they need to be able to do to say, okay, we want to be the best partner this chamber's ever had?
I think a lot of that just, again, depends on the city and the chamber. There's a lot of things, I have a feeling, I want to say, that the city and the chamber relationship was strained before my tenure here.
Gotcha.
I don't know that to be 100% accurate, but that was the feeling, and it took time to be able to work on that relationship. I think the best thing that cities can do to be partners with the chamber is give it time. If you've got a problem, talk to them. Don't be accusatory. They are, they're just like cities in that they, the city answers to a council. I answer to a board.
Yep.
You know, a lot of the things that happen because they happened at a board meeting or a certain way or whatever. Don't give up on that relationship is what I would say. I would say, as my friend Chad says, give them grace. Let's talk this through. Let's figure out how we can partner. Where, you know, find that one thing where you can partner on.
Yes.
And build the trust and growth from there. And once you do that, once you have a couple of successes, it's so much easier, and you can just build it fast. And then you're able to really, you know, make those impacts. Because I do think that Cedar Park is impactful because of the relationship the business community has with the city.
Yes, I think that's a huge factor.
I think, you know, businesses looking to move here, they call the city and they say, hey, we're looking to move there.
Yeah.
But they're also calling other businesses saying, hey, what's the environment like? What's the regulatory environment? What's the politics?
How long did it take you to get that new location
That's
open?
right. How many parking spaces did you have to do? I mean, whatever the case is, you know, they're making phone calls and they're doing their due diligence because they're making $1 million investments a lot of times. And so, you know, again, you want that relationship to be as positive as possible. And people don't like the airing of dirty laundry in a public way. And so if you do have a problem, you know, have that one-on-one conversation with the chamber exec or their board or whoever.
Yes.
But give them time, give them grace,
and
have a conversation. I think that's the way that, and tell them what you need.
Yeah.
Tell the chamber, hey, we need you to be our advocates because they can be.
Because then the chamber can also say, okay, here's what we need to do that.
Yeah.
And now we've got a conversation about a partnership.
Yeah.
It's funny you said that nobody likes the airing of dirty laundry.
Yeah.
One of the best quotes I've heard on this was David Morgan, the city manager in Georgetown. He was talking to one of his council members one time who was getting fired up about something a long time ago. And he said, listen, nobody wants to live next to the neighbors that are fighting in the front yard.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
It's very true. And so it takes okay, we want to be relational.
Yeah.
We want to build this. Yeah. And when it is challenging, to stop and say, okay, we're in a tough season right now. What do we need to do to get better?
Yeah. And I think, you know, what anybody will tell you who has a good relationship with somebody is, you know, if you've got a problem, go to that person. If you've heard something, go to that person because they may have said something that they didn't say. Like it may, you know, hey, I heard you say this. I did not.
It's amazing how many of these lessons and this wisdom that we talk about at this level, we didn't learn this in middle school. How did we not learn this in middle school? And yet so much of it is we didn't.
Just go to that person and say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, because I've seen cities where there is a contentious relationship between the chamber and the city. And that is ultimately bad for both organizations, and it's bad for the future of the city. Yeah. And that takes there almost has to be somebody's got to put their ego on a shelf and go, hey, maybe we have had past offenses, but we've got to, for the good of the city, we got to figure this out. For the future, we've got to figure this out. Yeah. And there's a real art to that. There's a real humility to say, hey, that thing you said hurt, but I want to get past that.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a marriage. If you've got at least one person willing to do that, there's a chance it's going to last. And so it takes that investment. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really cool, man.
There we go.
Tony, this has been a really good interview.
The pleasure.
I know how excited you were to come do this.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate it. I think there's some really good stuff here for cities specifically and public servants, but also for people in the chamber world. Like there is giving your life to serving a nonprofit that is about the betterment of the community. That's an incredible way to do things.
Well, that's very kind. And I hope that this helps somebody. So, you know.
If nothing else, it's helped me. It's funny. You and I talk all the time, and yet we text, we have lunches, and yet it never occurred to me that we wouldn't exist today without you. And so that now I feel like
it occurred to me all the time. Like
you were just waiting for me to realize it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I knew. You know, so
you just didn't want to be that guy who's by the way.
I try to be humble, but you know.
I understood. Thank you so much for this, man. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. You might also like our other podcast, The Leader Lab. You can find it on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. Just search for The Leader Lab. Each episode is under 10 minutes. It's just a quick thought to help you level up your leadership. You'll also find all the other leadership content we are putting out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search for @ForwardPartner.